Let's talk about a scenario that felt all too real. We're going to break down how the United States and Iran found themselves on the absolute knife edge of war back in April of 2026. This is a story of intense diplomacy, secret military operations, and a world basically holding its breath. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the day everything almost went off the rails was April 7th, 2026. After more than 50 days of back-and-forth conflict, everyone was just bracing for the inevitable. It really felt like a massive, catastrophic war was just hours away. The tension was just off the charts. And then this unbelievable message comes from the American president, Donald Trump. I mean, this wasn't just a threat of military strikes. He was talking about wiping an entire civilization from existence. You can imagine the panic. Leaders around the world were thinking, is he actually talking about a nuclear strike? For a lot of people, that was the only conclusion that made any sense, and it was horrifying. So the world is literally counting down to this deadline, Trump said. And then, with just 90 minutes to go, 90 minutes before the attack was supposed to happen, something completely unexpected breaks. News of a sudden 2-week ceasefire. You could almost hear the entire planet breathe a collective sigh of relief.
That last-minute deal pulled everyone back from the brink. But you have to ask, right? How did we even get to this point? How did the world get just an hour and a half away from a conflict that could have ended a civilization? To really get it, we need to rewind and look at how things escalated so badly.
Yeah, this whole thing didn't just pop up overnight. By the time we got to that crazy day on April 7th, this conflict had already been going on for over 50 days, and it had taken a really brutal human toll.
In just under 2 months, more than 4,000 people had been killed. And that's a staggering number. It's so much more than just a statistic.
And when you look at who these casualties were, the story gets even more stark. You got over 2,000 dead in Iran, another 2,000 in Lebanon, and then you have 39 casualties combined for Israel and the U.S. Behind those numbers, you have thousands of shattered families, millions of people forced from their homes, all caught in this geopolitical nightmare.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the fighting was moving into some truly terrifying territory. America and Israel were targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. At one point, 4 bombs were dropped near the Bushehr nuclear power plant. A direct hit could have been another Chernobyl, spreading radioactive material all across the Gulf. As Qatar's prime minister put it, a disaster like that would mean no water, no fish, no life for generations to come.
But the real turning point, the moment the crisis went into overdrive, was April 3rd. President Trump had been publicly saying the U.S. had total air dominance, that the war was basically won. And then, bam, Iran shoots down a cutting-edge American F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jet. Suddenly, everything changed.
So the 2 crew members from that jet ejected, landing right in the middle of Iranian territory. And this just kicked off a frantic race against the clock. Iran wanted to capture them. Can you imagine the propaganda victory? The U.S. obviously had to get their people out. What came next was one of the most audacious rescue missions you'll ever hear about.
For a full 24 hours, one of the airmen was totally off the grid. He was injured, hiding on a mountain at 7,000 feet. Everyone was holding their breath. And then, a really cryptic 3-word message comes over the radio. God is good. Once they made sure it wasn't some kind of Iranian trap, a massive rescue operation got the green light.
The mission itself was just incredible. First, the CIA launched this whole deception campaign to try and get Iranian search parties to stand down. Then, they found his exact spot and sent in hundreds of elite special forces. We're talking Delta Force, Navy SEALs, all while U.S. planes were bombing the area to provide cover. And against all odds, they got him out.
Now, Trump immediately declared the mission a massive success that proved America still controlled the skies. But the reality on the ground was a lot messier. The rescue helicopters took heavy fire, an A-10 Warthog attack plane actually crashed, and a bunch of other aircraft were damaged. So yeah, it was a success, but it was a costly one, and it really proved that Iran could still fight back, hard.
This whole high-stakes rescue drama is what led directly to that ultimatum from Trump on April 7th. With tensions just peaking, Pakistan actually stepped in to mediate, and that's what led to the surprise 2-week ceasefire and the plan for peace talks in Islamabad.
But those talks, they fell apart in less than a day. It all came down to this one major disagreement. The U.S. was demanding Iran stop all nuclear activity for 20 years. Iran's offer was only 5 years. And on that one single point, there was just no room for compromise.
What happened next was just pure chaos. The U.S. slaps a full naval blockade on Iran,
Iran says the crucial Strait of Hormuz is open and then immediately closes it again. Then, Israel launches its deadliest bombing campaign ever on Lebanon, killing over 300 people, saying that Lebanon wasn't even part of the ceasefire deal, which, by the way, was the exact opposite of what Pakistan was saying. It was a complete and utter mess.
And you know, this crisis wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was sending shockwaves everywhere. Just look at a country like India. Their merchant ships were getting shot at by Iran. They were having to ask the US for permission just to buy Russian oil. All while its main rival, Pakistan, was on the world stage mediating what could have been the biggest peace deal in a decade.
And all of this brings us right back to that fragile ticking clock. That last-second ceasefire, it pushed pause on the immediate threat, but it didn't solve a single one of the underlying problems. And that 2-week timer started ticking down right away.
I mean, just look at the timeline of those 2 weeks. It was insane. The ceasefire starts, and 2 days later, it's basically violated by an ally. Peace talks start, and they're dead a day later. The Strait of Hormuz is open, then it's closed. And it all leads to this one date, April 22nd, when the whole thing is set to expire.
So, as the world is watching the clock run down yet again, there are these huge questions just hanging in the air. Can the US and Iran somehow find a compromise before time runs out? And even if they do, will Israel, who's been acting on its own this whole time, even go along with it? And the biggest question of all, how long can this dangerous cycle of violence and temporary fixes last before something finally snaps for good?
That ceasefire bought the world 2 weeks. 2 weeks of a very fragile, chaotic kind of peace. But with that time now up and no clear path forward, the ultimate question is still just hanging there, leaving a very nervous world to ask, what happens next?